For this week's video, we're going to be painting an eggplant still life. Some of the things you'll learn in this week's video are values, you'll learn about color mixing, and you'll also learn about composition along with some other things as well. Hi, I'm Brian McCormick, and this is Gallery Bry, where every week you can learn how to master oil painting without using toxic solvents or mediums. Our color palette for this week is going to consist mainly of titanium white, yellow ochre, Venetian red, and Prussian blue. And the brush we're going to be using for this week's video is a large angled bright. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start painting. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started here. So as I mentioned before, my color palette is mostly Venetian red, Prussian blue, yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt umber. And I am painting on a sealed masonite panel, also known as hardboard. And I sealed it with GAC 100. And you want to do that because you don't want the oil seeping into the panel, which can rot it over time. And this was a little bit of an experiment. I just wanted to see what it was like to paint on that color, the raw panel. So you can always gesso it or use oil primer. If you're going to use oil primer, you want to make sure that you seal it as well so that that oil doesn't ruin the panel. Now I'm just getting started here putting in my dark colors. And it's helpful to paint from dark to light, especially if you're mainly using one brush here, which I don't normally do, but sometimes it's a nice challenge to limit yourself to just one brush because you really have to think very carefully about the way that you're painting. It's much more difficult to make a dark value darker once you start getting lighter value pigment in it, especially titanium white. So you really have to practice if you're using one brush. So it's a very good exercise, but not always best practice whenever you're painting. Again, you have to put in your darks first, and you really have to make sure they're in the right place and that you're ready to move on to using lighter values, because once you do that, you can't really use that brush again to get dark shadows once that titanium white or even yellow ochre is in there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of laying in some of the background color. Now you'll notice that I have a pretty limited color mixing pool set up over there. I just have a couple darks, a gray, a midtone, and I have some lighter values. I try to really organize my palette so that I just have a couple mixing pools, maybe some darks, some lights, some midtones. And this is helpful for a couple different reasons. When you keep adding to each pool, you're going to get more color harmony because you're getting new pigments introduced into there, and then all the pigments and the colors can talk to each other in the painting, so you'll get much better color harmony when you do that. The other thing, when you limit your color mixing pools, you'll see I'm adding some green in there now to get a lighter green, your pools will get thicker. So it actually kind of forces you to paint thin to thick, which is helpful. A lot of people talk about muddy colors, and muddy color is essentially just not getting the right color that you want for that part of the painting. There's really no such thing as muddy color. A lot of people paint in grays, monochrome. But anyway, whenever you limit your pools, it progressively gets thicker as you paint in them. So you will almost naturally paint from thin to thick. As you keep adding to your pools, they're going to get thicker and thicker and thicker. And this is going to enable you to layer paint much more easily. So if you try to paint thin paint over thick, messy paint, it's just going to blend together and you're not going to get clean color shapes, and it can turn into a real mess. So that's one of the reasons keeping a limited number of color pools is helpful. Now, if you are enjoying this, I am going to be releasing a new video on the book Alla Prima by Richard Schmid. I'm going to be talking about the book. I'm going to be reviewing it so that you can determine if it's the right book for you. All books are different. Some of them have more pictures, some of them have less diagrams, and some of them just focus on different things. So I'm going to be talking about that book, and if you're interested in seeing that, it's a very well-known book. It has a lot of good information in it. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and then you won't miss it when that video comes out. So right now I'm just putting in some highlights, and as I was mentioning before, the limited number of mixing pools can help create color harmony. Color harmony is basically when all of your colors in the painting look like they agree with each other. They don't look out of place. They don't look like they're from another planet. You know, for example, if you had a lot of colors on your palette and then all of a sudden you put in a green that wasn't mixed in with any other colors, it might look out of place. But when you have a limited palette and when you use limited mixing pools, all the colors mix together and they all kind of look like they should belong together in the painting. So that's another good reason to keep those limited mixing pools. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm kind of sculpting in my highlights. Now, I actually cheated and got a new brush again because I wanted to get those really dark values. And once you get white in your brush, you can't go back and do that. So I am cheating a little bit here. But again, that's really just an exercise, so it's not cheating. I actually recommend to paint with multiple brushes so that you don't have to wash your brushes while you're painting. So I paint completely solvent free. I don't use mineral spirits. I don't use any kind of mediums aside from a touch of walnut oil. And when you have multiple brushes, you can keep a brush for each value that you're painting with, and then you don't have to go back and do that. Now I'm just scraping in my signature here with the back of the brush, and it works very well. If you found that information helpful, you can click right over here to subscribe to get more videos each week. And if you want to see another video right now, you can click right over here. Hope you're doing well, and we'll see you next week.